Thank you very much, Bruce. Is everyone able to hear me all right? Mic's coming through? Excellent, excellent. I really appreciate an introduction. It sounds much more believable coming from someone else, some of the crazy stuff that we get to engage in on a daily basis down in Christchurch. Welcome. We're going to talk a bit, as mentioned, about virtual reality today. We will also touch a wee bit on augmented reality, but before I start to dive in, can I get a quick show of hands who has used virtual reality thus far in some capacity or other? About 50 or excellent, maybe even over half. Brilliant. Those who have worked with or played with or tried out augmented reality, hands up. Excellent. Can I get hands up again if that is not counting Pokemon Go? All right, excellent, excellent. All right, now that's really good for me to work with. Thank you. The way I've geared this presentation is largely orientated towards those of you who already have a general understanding of the technology, who might have seen snippets and bits and pieces, but if you're completely new to either of the brands of technology, don't fret. We'll cover them very lightly and basic. For a start, virtual reality being a world where you can be completely encompassed. By pulling on a pair of goggles, you are completely immersed in said virtual or digital landscape. You can be under the water on the deck of a ship, you can be on the surface of Mars, you can be standing in front of an alien creature that could not possibly exist. Whatever you can imagine can potentially come true in a virtual world. On the other side, augmented reality is the complete inverse of this. This is where we stay in the real world, we're still wearing some sort of a headset or glasses or something along those lines, and we stay in the real world, but instead we bring holograms into virtual space around us. So for instance, all of you, if you were to be wearing augmented reality headsets at the same time as I am, I could make a 3D model appear, maybe a spaceship or something like that, but all of you would be able to see the spaceship. As I walk around it, as I point to it, as I enlarge it, shrink it, move it, you'd be able to witness all of those manipulations in real time, but we wouldn't have left our usual reality in order to do so. As mentioned, augmented reality will be a much smaller part of this presentation, but there'll hopefully be enough to keep you interested. Let's start with a wee look at the actual history of virtual reality. Does anyone know how old it is? Can I get an answer yelled out from the crowd or two? How long have we had virtual reality for? 20 years? 30? 30? Not bad, not bad. Was there another? 1980s? Not bad. Brilliant, brilliant. I should probably have clarified, consumer available virtual reality. So virtual reality that is ready for those who are in a consumer position, excluding the likes of maybe military funded or medical funded virtual reality, which over the last 30 to 50 years has been the mainstream application for it. But we're very close to the mark if we look at the Nintendo Virtua Boy. So 1995 to 1996, that is exactly how long it lasted. It lasted a year. And the reason for this is it was absolutely horrible. What you see there is a very heavy headset that you'd plonk on your head while it rested, supported on your shoulders. It was that heavy. You'd be looking through the screen. The resolution was appalling. Your Nokia phone from 10 years ago would probably still show it up. You could look around. The graphics they left a lot to be desired, to say the most. And it made everybody pretty bloody sick. So its popularity was certainly not one that was picked up by the mainstream audiences, and needless to say, the last 10 to 20 years, most mainstream experts, tech geeks, etc., have all blamed this particular device for the death of virtual reality. It was just that bad. However, it actually goes back a bit further than that. A Viewmaster, yes. Now, a few of you who might even have thought you hadn't tried virtual reality might be thinking to change your minds at this point. The beautiful Viewmaster encapsulated this wee cassette device, and what would happen, if I can use the laser pointer, oh, excellent, I can. What would happen is you'd have a photo on either side of the cassette here, and each of those two photos on either side was from a slightly different angle. In order to trigger the stereoscopic view, when we see as humans, as long as we've got both functioning eyes, if we look at a certain point, we're able to judge the depth and the distance, given the fact that we're seeing it from two slightly different perspectives. Offsetting those two photos or images allowed us to see 3D depth inside of the Viewmaster, and it was really cool, and it was really immersive, and it's still actually older than that. The Cyclorama was it 1787, so about 230 years ago, is arguably the first introduction of virtual reality. Now, virtual does not have to mean that a computer was ever involved at any point. Virtual just means to actually identify that you can be changed in terms of your understanding of your spatial location. You can imagine that you are somewhere different. You are in a landscape that is altered from what is truly surrounding you, or at least physically surrounding you. Now, these gorgeous paintings would be, as said, a 360 panorama painted all around the user, and an individual can just stand in the middle of it and admire it, and with a little bit of imagination, appreciate that they could be a part of the great battle or event or whatever historical moment this particular panorama was trying to encapsulate. So, in order to truly appreciate, of course, where we're going from this tech, it's been important to understand where we've come from. But unlike most things in terms of what we're, as humans, usually accustomed to, it's not a necessarily linear development. And therefore, we look at the likes of exponential. Did anyone get to attend Singularity University? 1, 2, okay, no worries, awesome guys. The idea with exponential, and this is what Singularity really focuses on, is that technology develops not on a linear plane, but on an exponential plane. Now, this was originally identified by Lawes Moore, one of the founders of Intel. He identified that the number of transistors on a CPU or a computer chip typically doubled every year. And what would happen, of course, is computers would become twice as powerful as they were the year before. Now, to understand this in human context, if I was to take 30 linear steps from this point, I'd probably end up down where the camera is, down at the back. Not too hard to imagine. If I take 30 exponential steps, I will end up going around the world about 28, 29 times. Oh, sorry, no, sorry, I've miscalculated. 8 to 13 times, depending on how large my steps are. But the crazy thing is, the 25th of those 30 steps, you've actually only walked halfway around in the first place. It jumps. It will start off on a slow, steady increase and then jump when you're really not expecting it to. And when we apply this to technology, it means that trying to get a prediction for where any of our tech is going to end up, even if you're looking at a single niche area of technology, discounting all combinations of technology where robotics interferes with artificial intelligence and virtual reality all gets into the mix, it becomes incredibly difficult for any of us to start crystal ball gazing. The best we can do is make some educated guesses and then hope that we're at least within 10% of the ballpark. What I'd like to line it up with, though, is if we compare the development of virtual reality to these dear old devices. Now, was anyone lucky enough to have a Palm Pilot back in the day? Yeah, a couple of nods. Awesome, awesome. You will probably have been a few of the prestigious members of the club of Palm Pilot owners who got to pull it out at various events and show people how cool it was. You can enter contacts, you can take memos, you might even be able to play games. And it was a really revolutionary device, except for the fact that it didn't really take off because no one could typically afford it. It wasn't actually that easy to input data. You'd have to pull out the stylus and then you'd have to meticulously tap away on individual keys and then backspace when you hit the wrong one. And if you were to compare it to taking out a notebook from your pocket and jotting down what you wanted to do, that was still 1,000,000 times more efficient, cheaper, faster to do. It didn't make that much sense for the everyday consumer to go and pick one of these up. However, we saw a massive jump in 2003 with the Pocket PC from Microsoft. Now, this was much more colorful, powerful. You could install applications onto it. Graphics were so much better. It still didn't get picked up because it was complete bonkers trying to put any sort of information into it. You were still limited to the stylus. The touch screen wasn't very sensitive. It was slow. It was laborious. It was frictional. And then, of course, we see the iPhone, and we all know what happened after that turned up. The difference between all these devices really comes down to that element of friction. How easy it is for a user to perform a set task versus using some other medium or platform. And the iPhone is certainly the winner, considering that almost all of us are likely to have smartphones on us these days. But to come back to that point of exponential, look at the difference in time. 7 years from the Palm Pilot to the Pocket PC. Almost half that to jump up to the iPhone. This is where exponential comes in. Once it starts to pick up speed, the increase and improvement of this technology is absolutely mind-boggling. Now, if we look at the likes of virtual reality, this device here on the far left, the Oculus Rift, was the most recent introduction of this tech for your everyday consumer. When it came out, this was a good few $100s as a development kit. You could put it on your head. It was cool. It was immersive. It still made you sick. It was horrible in terms of resolution. It was fuzzy. Great experience, but not something you want to be putting on every day. 3 years later, we see this develop into what's our current consumer offering of virtual and augmented reality technologies. We've got the HTC Vive, which, if any of you haven't already, please do come down and visit us in the booth to have a go on. See just how far the technology has come. The refresh rate, the resolution, the ability to walk around have all made this technology so much more immersive. The one below it, the Oculus Rift, so this is now the grown-up version of our device from 2013. And then underneath that, the Microsoft HoloLens, our first truly consumer-ready, or almost consumer-ready, piece of augmented reality technology. Now again, 3 years between these two. This far left one was great to communicate the concept, still atrocious to use. 3 years later, we've got tech that is actually adding value to various individuals, organizations, and companies all around the world. Now, this far right one, these aren't really predictions because these are actually filed patents. The top two, we see Microsoft and Apple entering the arena with augmented reality headsets that are as lightweight as glasses. As you can see, there's like wee devices on the side, about the size of a AAA battery, capable of beaming onto your lenses different augmented reality views to convey information about your surroundings. And then, of course, my favorite one is this bottom one in the corner. Does anyone recognize what that is? Contact lens, yes, that exists. It's from Sony, and it's powered by blinking, and it's capable of taking photos. So, some pretty cool tech, some pretty cool toys. It's come a long way. Why is it so important for us? Well, for a start, could I please have a brave volunteer? I promise it'll be easy, nothing difficult. Go on. Excellent. Please come up. What I'd like you to do is stand right about here, face this way, and you see the camera.
I do.
Okay. I want you to maintain focus on the camera and do not look away. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring something into your vision, and we're going to see how far away it has to be before you're actually able to see the object coming into view. Pardon me, into view. All right? All right, so I'm going to bring it in close, and what I want you to do is say it the moment you can see it coming into view. Yep? Brilliant. What color is it?
Golden, like something?
Goldeny, light something. Any other guess?
Brown.
Brown. Brilliant. What color is it?
Blue.
Blue. Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. What's interesting is, of course, our brain is continuously playing tricks on us. And when we see the world, we don't actually see it all in color as we believe we do. In fact, what we see is a ring of color, and then everything outside our peripheral vision is black and white, which is why, even though we feel like we can see the color, we can't tell what color it is in that particular situation. And I recommend you go home and try it on friends and family, because it's very interesting to watch them struggle with the concept of being able to see an object and not be able to tell you, or even have a clue in the foggiest, what the color is. Now, our brain is very good, as I said, at changing what we see, but it works in reverse as well. You see, what we see is able to have a massive impact on the way our brain works. Now, to give an example, we've got a snowy background here. There was an excellent example of basically military veterans in the US coming back who were heavily burned. They had terrible maximum degree burns, scar tissue, all that sort of stuff. And while they're in hospital, it's incredibly painful when they have to have these wounds cleaned. If you know anyone who's gone through this sort of horrible, horrible procedure, you'll know that during that period it often has to happen 2 to 3 times a day. Dressings being applied and antiseptics being put on and all that sort of stuff. It's incredibly painful. It's excruciating. What a particular control group looked to do was it was trying to use morphine versus virtual reality to alleviate the pain of these individuals. And morphine was found to have a 30% reduction in pain when applied. It's not bad, but of course you're still going to be pretty bloody aware of the remaining 70%. what they did with virtual reality is they created a snowy world, a snowy landscape, where the individual who had all the horrible burns would have a headset on, and they were able to look around, and they were able to shoot snowballs at penguins and igloos and all that sort of stuff. When the snowballs hit their target, it would explode into big glossy crystals and all that amazing stuff. And what started to happen is that the individuals who are in this virtual reality world, their brains would start to change their interpretation of the pain of their burns as cold. And as a result of interpreting that pain as cold, it actually reduced the pain that they were experiencing by 80%. 30% for a chemical concoction, 80% from just being shown something different to your visuals. So that's a pretty big change. It doesn't stop there, though. We've also got the ability to learn far more by using this technology. The CEO of the Children's Miami Hospital wanted to work out how powerful is virtual reality when it comes to learning. How well do we retain information? And so what they did was they took two groups of individuals and they taught them the same content, one through traditional means and the other through virtual reality. Now, what happened was that the individuals who went under the traditional learning, they managed to retain 20% of the content, not bad. A week later, pretty decent. But as you can see up on there, virtual reality managed 80% a year later. Massive increase in the retention of information, the ability to understand and regurgitate said content when required. Individuals had been left with a lasting memory of what they went through in virtual reality compared to reading it off a book or watching it through videos or hearing other individuals just talk about it. Now, the reason that this is able to stay with us, so to speak, or rather, the reason why virtual reality has such a powerful impact on us comes down to a number of criteria here. Number one, 360 surround. This is a pretty straightforward one, right? When you throw a headset on, your information is no longer limited to a single LCD screen in front of you, or maybe two or three if you're really lucky. You can control where information is and appearing in your world completely as far as you can imagine. You could have 50 screens surrounding you. You could have one giant one, or step away from the screens. You can start to volumize the data. 3D graphs in true metric scale. You can see size. You can appreciate momentum. The amount of information that you can get by being surrounded by this is a whole new level. The act of doing. We all know if we're going to learn how to do something, we're going to apply practice, so to speak. We really want to get hands-on, walk through the procedure, actually turn the dials, pull the knobs. Now, no amount of videos or books or hearing about it will allow you to do what virtual reality does, which is coming as close as possible to the real thing without being in the true-to-life simulation. Now, this is important, of course, in instances which are overly costly, overly dangerous, or even impossible to simulate. For instance, depressurization on a plane is not something that most air hosts and hostesses have practice at dealing with, but in virtual reality, you can not only experience it, you can be a part of the action in an interactive capacity. Focused environment. Few of us can deny that having a set of horse blinders on will help us actually focus on some sort of work. But again, virtual reality, with those goggles on, you control the content that you're exposed to. You control everything, including exclusion from external distractions if you want. It's a small, low-hanging fruit bonus, but it does count where it needs to. We've got the likes of sensors. We were taught in primary school that we've got maybe 5 different sensors, 6 depending on how your teacher was. Scientists would actually debate that we've got 25 different sensors. The likes of temperature, the likes of pressure, pain, touch, even the sense of somatic sensors, rather, have so many different levels to them. Now, this applies to sight as well. It's not just limited to what we see. It's the ability to determine depth and see or visualize, understand momentum. If you've got a car coming at you on a TV screen, you're maybe not going to be able to move out of its way in the same capacity that you could if it was a true-to-life car coming at you where you can appreciate its physical properties and therefore evaluate at what point it should be reaching your location. And finally, the likes of bandwidth. This is my personal favorite. What we see there is the optic nerve. Now, the optic nerve is a pretty impressive piece of biotech, if you will. It's capable of transferring information at 1 megabit per second. Now, okay, for the techier of you might appreciate it's not the fastest speed in the world, but it's still pretty damn good. What is applied to it, though, is that if you're trying to pick up information from a book, for instance, if you're trying to read text or watch a video, you're only using 0.1% of that bandwidth in order to absorb that content, that information. Again, introducing virtual reality, you're able to use 100% of that bandwidth because you're able to pick up so much new data that could not otherwise be represented in other mediums in the first place. So, we are at an Agile conference, and it would be rude not to include a little bit about our development. I'm sure you're all intimately familiar with this particular imagery. What we do at Corvecto, so Corvecto is our studio down in Christchurch, as mentioned, focusing on developing these virtual and augmented apps for the serious application. We go through stages of proof of concept, prototype, and minimum viable product. And we try to really make sure that our customers are heavily engaged throughout the cycles of iteration as we look to improve on what we've already learned from them, whilst making sure that we leave all the things that aren't working far behind wherever possible. A couple of examples of this. Proof of concept is dropping a piece of machinery, in this case, Weimer Solutions. They're vegetable polishing equipment into virtual reality. That's all we did. Now, it's not the most exciting application for it, but as you can see, this individual is clearly enjoying himself. This is actually at Fruit Logistica. 75,000 attendees turn up to this every year in Berlin. He might have had a little bit much to drink, but it only adds to the experience. What this proof of concept alone allowed Weimer to do was by just dropping their machinery into a virtual world, they could take their entire factory line. Yeah, he's going to try it. He's going to try it. Allowed them to take their whole factory line. Yeah, there we go. In a suitcase on the plane. Okay, I mean, no longer do you have to worry about spending exorbitant amounts of money trying to transport this equipment over and setting it up and all the dangers and implications involved. Throw it in a suitcase and it's there for you. Prototype. So at this point, we're moving away from proof of concept. We want something hands-on, tangible, something functional, something more interactive. Meridian Energy got us to develop the likes of wind turbines that their users were able to actually climb up. And if you've ever been to a wind turbine or looked inside it, it's actually really damn high. Even in virtual reality, climbing this ladder takes a good 3 to 4 minutes. And you get quite a workout on the arms as well. Once you get to the top, you're able to look under the shell of things. You're able to see the likes of all the different mechanical apparatus as they move in time, the gears wind and turn, etc. So it's actually quite cool for their engineers, but it also helps them validate pretty early on if they've spent 6 to 12 months training a technician only to find out that they're scared of heights. Yeah, it's got value even there. And then minimum viable product, this is where you start to see the prototypes iterated on enough times that they are functionally usable on site. In this instance, Fulton Hogan had us develop a bitumen training prototype. Bitumen is boiling hot liquid tar. This is a demo that we're mostly showing downstairs as well. So again, if you want to try this out for yourselves, do potter on down and have a look. The idea is that this is an incredibly expensive and dangerous piece of machinery. Even removing it for the sake of practice is incredibly costly to the supply chain. But boiling hot liquid tar, it's 160 degrees plus. It's not much fun if you have something go wrong. In this example, individuals are able to go through the entire process of training and operating it. And if something goes wrong, if they bugger something up, they don't suffer the physical affliction. And yet they still become very reminiscent in terms of what can go wrong. They will have a mental image left in their minds as to where this can have flaws if you're not following the official procedure. Now, let's go for a bit of a case study. There was an excellent example of how we managed to pair up with Assurity. Now, Assurity, as you're well likely to know already, it's got a great user insights team and a great crowdsourcing division. And we were approached by NZ Customs, who had a bit of a problem that they had new smart gates that were coming out. Now, we've all likely used the smart gates at some point. You'll go up and you have your e-passport and you slide it into the scanner and it opens the gates you go through, have your photo taken, all of that. What becomes troublesome for customs is when an individual turns up with an e-passport and they go to the kiosk. Or if they turn up without an e-passport and they try and use the smart gate. It's not very effective for them at that point. Every one of those delays slows the process down. It's a headache for everyone else involved. Now they're about to open that up to about 18 additional nationalities. That's going to be a lot to work with. So Customs approached us in Assurity and they said, look, how can you help us? So on Corvecto's side, what we did was we created a platform by which they were able to design their own layouts. And I don't mean just leverage a floor map and build the walls. They were able to design the color, change the likes of the signage that would appear there, move objects, move different apparatus, lay out the scene completely how they wanted, and then put on the virtual reality goggles, they could continue to manipulate that scene from within virtual reality. At the end of the day, it meant that they could put users through. Now that's important because with the abilities that Assurity brings to offer, Customs said, right, we would like this demographic. We would like ages of so-and-so to so-and-so. English should be their second language. They were able to classify exactly what demographics, what sample they wanted, and then using our virtual reality platform, they were able to run them through in a controlled environment. Now, think about it. The reason this is really valuable is if you've ever tried taking a survey at the airport, when you've got someone who's trying to carry bags under each of their arms, they're late for their plane, they're tired, they're grumpy, shoving a form with a survey under their nose isn't quite the best way to win them over. Using this, of course, you've got so much more control in the scenario, and you can change and trial different environments. So all of that signage, for instance, Assurity were able to mock up different versions of signs and work out what was most effective. What did people respond better to? What were they able to use? And as a result, they generated a beautiful 40-page report that went into comprehensive detail in terms of how or why they could improve their processes. Needless to say, the airport has already gone ahead and implemented the changes that were actually technically designed by Assurity. Passport scanning at the go. And my personal favorite, this is one of the things that that particular report had identified, was when you walk up to the sign to go through your e-passport, you've got this here, Smart Gate go left, all other passengers go right. Now, no one, until Assurity looked at it, had identified the problem here. This logo looks like a right arrow, doesn't it? It's crazy. Good 5-10 years, individuals have been using this, and it wasn't until it was looked at under this sort of magnifying glass that the individuals were going to go, oh my gosh, yes, I see how we've buggered that one up there. Look out for it next time you're at the airport if it's still there by then. So that's us, guys. It gives you a bit of a range in terms of the sort of tech that we're playing with, what we can do, where we're going. And if you haven't already, as I say, please do come down, check out what we're doing in the booth. First hands-on experience. It will be enough to keep you busy. All right, thank you.